I had always had a soft spot for old things. Frames with chipped corners, hand-painted teacups, anything that looked like it had a story. That probably came from my grandmother. She used to say, "Things that last a lifetime always carry a little bit of soul." I don't know if that's true, but after my breakup with Drew, I was clinging to anything that felt solid. I moved into the rental in Santa Rosa at the end of September. It was a little place tucked behind a row of walnut trees, half a duplex with scuffed hardwood floors and a porch swing that creaked when no one was sitting in it. It was quiet and it was mine. After 3 years of sharing a one-bedroom apartment with a man who slowly made me feel like I took up too much space, even silence felt like freedom. But freedom is expensive, especially when you're freelancing an interior design during a slow season and trying to furnish a home from scratch. I didn't have the money for West Elm or Pottery Barn. Most days I scrolled Craigslist with my coffee, looking for second-hand pieces that didn't look haunted. Funny how that word sticks in your head. It was a Saturday morning, cold enough for socks but too early for heat. I was curled up on my floor mattress when I saw it, a Craigslist ad titled, "Antique Mirror, $80, must pick up tonight." The photos weren't professional, but the mirror was beautiful. It was tall, probably 6 feet, with a dark oak frame carved into vines and lilies, definitely Art Nouveau. It looked like something you'd see behind the counter in an old apothecary, the kind of thing I would have never afforded new. The seller listed herself as Mara J. The message said, "Still available, must pick up tonight. Bring help, cash only." That part made me pause. I'd messaged Craigslist sellers before. Most of them were laid back, even flaky. This felt urgent, like she needed it gone. Still, the price was right, and I hadn't treated myself to anything beautiful since moving in. I messaged her, asking for the address. Red Creek Road, past mile marker 42. Look for a white mailbox, long gravel driveway. The name of the road rang a bell, but not in a warm way. It was one of those places that wasn't quite in town and not quite out. I hesitated. Then I did what women always do when we go places alone. We make a plan. I texted my sister. "Going to pick up a mirror, little outside town. I'll text when I'm home." She replied with a thumbs up and a warning. "If it smells like murder, leave." I laughed out loud, but I still brought my pepper spray and a flashlight just in case. I left at 6:30 p.m. with the mirror on my mind and a $20 bill tucked in my front pocket. The sun was low when I hit the edge of town. I passed quiet roads, thick vines, and barns that looked abandoned. It was beautiful in that slightly eerie way the California countryside can be. But by the time I saw that white mailbox, bent sideways like someone had hit it with a truck, I didn't feel like laughing anymore. The gravel road wound through a corridor of trees that seemed too dense for the season. My headlights barely cut through the shadows. And just when I thought about turning around, the woods opened up into a small clearing. A one-story house stood there, probably post-war construction, with peeling paint and a dim porch light. No cars in sight, no sound, just the house and me. I pulled up slowly and parked. The trees leaned in like they were listening. I texted Mara, "Here." No reply. And then, like a scene out of something I'd always roll my eyes at, a man stepped out from the front door. He wore overalls and a denim jacket. His hair was gray at the temples, but not old. He looked like someone who chopped wood for fun. He just stood there, staring, until I rolled my window down. "You here for the mirror?" he asked. His voice was flat, barely a blink. "Yeah." "Is Mara here?" "She's inside," he said, stepping back. "I'm her brother, Wade." That's when the cold hit me. The air had been mild all day, but in that moment, it turned sharp. Still, I got out because I didn't want to be rude, because the mirror was too good a deal, because I didn't want to seem scared. I walked up the porch steps slowly, noticing how the wood groaned beneath my boots. He didn't open the door wider, he just turned and walked in. And I did, even though every instinct I had was already whispering not to. The smell hit me first. Musty, like damp wood and old carpet that had been left to rot. Not unbearable, but sharp. Not what I expected from someone selling antiques. Inside, the house was darker than it should have been. One bulb lit the living room, hanging from a fixture with no cover. The light flickered slightly, buzzing faintly. There were no rugs, no curtains, just bare windows and yellowed walls. The furniture, if you could call it that, was a folding chair and a crooked side table, not even dusted. It didn't feel like someone had lived here. It felt like someone had been here recently, just long enough to unlock the door. "She's in the back," Wade said, not looking at me. He pointed down a hallway that seemed to go too far for the size of the house. I hovered near the doorway, not ready to step in all the way. "Is Mara okay?" "She's resting, long day." His voice was even, like he was reciting a script. "You all ready? Mirror set up for you." I swallowed and took a step inside. My boots made soft thumps on the wood. Wade didn't move or follow right away, but I could feel his eyes. I glanced around for signs of life. Shoes, a purse, a coat hanging by the door, nothing. No smell of food, no hum of a fridge, just emptiness. The hallway was narrow, walls bare. There was a door slightly ajar at the end, with a dim amber glow coming through. I walked slower now. The air felt heavier somehow, like the house had exhaled and was waiting to breathe again. As I reached the door, I looked back. Wade was there, closer than before, just standing silently behind me, like he'd drifted forward without a sound. I turned back and stepped into the room. There was no Mara, no furniture, no windows, just the mirror. It stood on the far wall, taller than I remembered from the pictures, leaned slightly forward, like someone had just finished adjusting it. The frame was even more beautiful up close, worn oak with lilies and vines carved deep into the wood. But it was the glass that made me pause, because it wasn't reflecting me. Not right away, anyway. It was dark, like looking through tinted glass. And then, slowly, it caught the shape of the room and me. But behind the reflection, I saw smudges, palm prints from the inside of the mirror, as if someone had been pushing to get out. And then I saw the note. Taped to the upper right corner was a yellow sticky note, edges curled. "Don't turn around, walk out fast." I stood frozen, my heart thudding in my ears. I could hear Wade's breathing now, closer. Something primal inside me finally kicked in. I turned my head slightly. "Where is Mara exactly?" "She's resting," he repeated. No inflection, no movement. I smiled, something instinctive, polite. "Oh, okay, I think I left my cash in the Jeep." He didn't say a word, just stood there blocking half the hallway behind me. I nodded, my hand gripping my phone inside my coat pocket. "Just 1 second." I turned and walked slowly, calmly back toward the front. No sudden movements, just polite distance. He didn't follow. Not yet. Outside, the cold air slapped my face. It was almost a relief. I walked a wide loop around the Jeep, like I was searching for something in the back seat. I didn't look at the house. I didn't check to see if Wade was behind me. I got in fast and locked the doors. My hands shook as I pushed the key into the ignition.
The porch light buzzed again. Still no sound from inside. I reversed quickly and didn't stop until I hit the main road. That's when I saw it. In the trees, just before the road opened up, hidden behind a few thick branches, was a steel burn barrel. It was still smoldering, pale smoke curling up toward the dark sky. Inside were scraps of blackened wood, melted plastic, and something that looked off. I slowed down for a split second. There was a purse in there, or what was left of one. Red leather, buckled front, exactly like the kind I used to see at vintage stores. I didn't stop. I didn't take a picture. I didn't want to look longer than I had. I just drove fast. I didn't call 911 right away. I didn't even speak until I was back in town, parked in front of a gas station, breathing hard into my hands. Then I made the call, told the dispatcher everything. The mirror, the man, the address, the note. I left out how scared I'd been, how stupid I felt. When I got home, I didn't sleep. I left every light on. My cat hid under the bed and wouldn't come out. 2 days later, a deputy called me back. The house was empty, furniture gone, no sign of a mirror, no sign of Wade, no Mara J in the county registry. The listing was gone too, deleted like it had never been there. Could have been a squatter or someone using a fake name, the deputy said. We filed the report. Hard to say, Will. That was it. Nothing more they could do. I still had the sticky note. I'd shoved it in my coat pocket without thinking. I found it that night and taped it to my fridge, not as a souvenir, but as a warning. I stopped using Craigslist after that. I went back to big box stores and digital catalogs, Etsy, Facebook Marketplace if I really needed a deal, but only porch pickups, only public places. And I never, ever bought another mirror. I thought I'd forget. That's what people assume after close calls. You get through it, go home, maybe talk about it once or twice, and then the days blur and your life continues. But the body remembers. Mine did anyway. The following week, I couldn't sleep, not deeply. I kept waking at 3 or 4 a.m., thinking I heard footsteps, floor creaks, doors shifting. I'd lie there with my hand clenched around my phone under the blanket, the blue light flickering against the ceiling. I unboxed the door camera I'd bought last year but never installed. I set it up the next day. It didn't help me sleep, but I needed to know if anyone came near that door again. Luis, my neighbor from across the hall, knocked one morning while I was sorting through leftover paint swatches in the entryway. He was holding a coffee and wearing the same hoodie I'd seen him in most mornings. We'd never talked before, beyond a nod in the hallway. "You all right?" he asked, voice low. I blinked at him. "Yeah, why?" "I saw you the other night. You came back fast, looked pale. Just a weird vibe. Then 2 nights later, I saw a white pickup circling the lot. Slow, no lights. Figured I should say something." That was the first time I told someone the full story. Not just the police version, but everything. The smell of the house, the fake normalcy, the sticky note, the mirror. Luis didn't react with disbelief. He just listened, eyes steady. When I finished, he nodded once and said, "Yeah, that wasn't a seller. That was a setup." The word setup settled in my stomach like a stone. "Craigslist is like rolling dice," he said. "Some of them are counting on you thinking they are normal. Most folks are, but some aren't, and they count on it." After that, he started checking in more, small things, waving when I got home, tapping once on the wall between our apartments before bed. It helped more than I expected. I found myself walking through the house differently too. Slower, checking corners, watching reflections. The mirror stayed in my mind like a thorn I couldn't pull out. Not just because of what almost happened, but because someone had left a note. Someone before me. Someone who didn't get out. It took me 3 months before I could go into a thrift store again. Even then, I stuck to clothes and kitchenware. No furniture, no glass. I'd look past the mirrors like they were open doors to places I didn't want to visit. In January, I finally gave in and bought a small mirror for the bathroom from Target. New, sealed. Still, I kept it covered for the first week, like it had to earn my trust. One night, while brushing my teeth, I noticed my own reflection looking off. Not scary, just tired. My eyes were sunken, my shoulders hunched. I hadn't realized how small I'd made myself, how careful. That's when it hit me. What scared me the most wasn't Wade or the house or the mirror. It was how easy it had been for someone to learn just enough about me to set the trap. A vulnerable woman redecorating after a breakup, on a budget, looking for charm, willing to drive a little too far if the price was right. I'd handed that story to the internet without realizing. Through social posts, through Craigslist messages, breadcrumbs, all out in the open. That's what Wade, or whoever he was, used. That's how predators work. They don't chase, they wait, and they smile. I kept the sticky note. It's still on my fridge, faded now, curling at the corners. I've thought about throwing it away more than once, but I can't because someone left it for me. A stranger who never got the chance to walk out. A warning that came just in time. If I hadn't looked close, if I had turned my back to the mirror, I don't know what would have happened. I don't want to know. I never replied to another Craigslist listing. I moved again after my lease ended. Closer to family, brighter windows, a neighborhood with sidewalks and streetlights that actually work. I still decorate. I still love old things. But now I care just as much about where they come from as how they look. The past leaves fingerprints, and sometimes those prints aren't on the surface. They're pressed into the spaces no one thinks to clean. Sometimes the most dangerous things don't come with warnings. They come with offers. And sometimes the difference between a good deal and a trap is just one moment of gut instinct. Listen to it. Trust your fear when it whispers. Because survival.
This all happened about 3 years ago. I was living in a small apartment complex in Riverside, California. I was 24 at the time. I worked a dead-end job in a warehouse. Like most people my age, I was constantly broke. My apartment was sparsely furnished. It had a mix of hand-me-downs and cheap stuff I had bought myself. The centerpiece of my living room was a truly hideous love seat. The previous tenant had left it behind. The fabric was stained. One of the springs was broken. It smelled faintly of old cigarettes. I hated it. For months, I had been dreaming of getting a real couch. I wanted something I could actually stretch out on. The problem was that I could not afford one. So I did what any broke person does. I started scouring Craigslist. I focused on the free stuff section. It was mostly a sea of junk, broken appliances, stained mattresses, and firewood. But I checked it religiously every day. I hoped for a miracle. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, I saw it. The ad was simple. It was titled, "Free Couch, Must Pick Up." The picture showed a large, dark gray sectional. It was not brand new, but it looked clean and modern. It was 1,000 times better than what I had. The description just said, "Good condition, no pets, no smoking, needed gone by this weekend, located in the Woodcrest area." Woodcrest was a bit of a drive, maybe 30 minutes east, into a more rural, semi-developed part of the county. The houses there have more land. I did not care. I immediately replied to the email. I said I had a truck and could pick it up that very evening. I did not actually have a truck, but my buddy Mark did. I knew I could borrow his for a couple of pizzas and a six-pack. To my surprise, I got a reply within 10 minutes. "Tonight works great. The address is Eucalyptus Avenue. Just let me know when you're on your way. My name is David." I was ecstatic. I called Mark. He agreed to let me use his old Ford Ranger. After work, I swung by his place. I picked up the keys. I headed out toward Woodcrest as the sun began to set. It painted the California sky in shades of orange and purple. The drive started normally, but the further I got from the city, the more the landscape changed. The neat suburban streets gave way to winding, two-lane roads with no streetlights. The houses grew farther apart. They were separated by dusty lots, horse properties, and groves of orange trees. By the time I turned onto Eucalyptus Avenue, it was almost completely dark. This was not a real street. It was more like a long, poorly paved road. A few houses were scattered along it. They were hidden behind overgrown bushes and chain-link fences. My phone's GPS said I had arrived, but I had to drive slowly. I peered at the faded numbers on mailboxes to find the right place. The address was set back from the road. It was at the end of a long gravel driveway. It was a single-story ranch-style house that had probably seen better days. The paint was peeling. The front yard was a chaotic mess of weeds, old car parts, and discarded furniture. A dim yellow light glowed from a single window near the front door. The whole place gave me a weird vibe, but I figured maybe the guy was just a slob. I had come this far. I was not leaving without the couch. I parked the truck. Its headlights cut a path through the darkness. They illuminated the front porch, and there it was, the Bray sectional from the picture. It looked just as good in person. I pulled out my phone. I texted the number from the email. "Hey, David, I'm here. I'm in the Ford Ranger." A moment later, the front door creaked open. But it was not one man who came out. It was two. They were big guys, probably in their late 30s. They had burly builds and shaved heads. One wore a dirty white t-shirt and jeans. The other wore a black hoodie. They did not smile. "You're the guy for the couch?" The one in the t-shirt grunted. His voice was gravelly. "Yeah, that's me," I said. "Thanks again, man. You're saving me." He just nodded. "I'm Dave. This is my brother, Rick." Rick, the one in the hoodie, just stared at me. His hands were shoved in his pockets. His expression was completely blank. It was deeply unsettling. "All right, well, if one of you wants to give me a hand, we can probably get this loaded up pretty quick," I said. I walked toward the porch. "We'll both help," Dave said. It was not an offer. It was a statement. Things are heavier than they look. Something about the situation felt off. It was the way they stood. They flanked the path to the porch. Rick hadn't said a single word. He was just watching my every move. But again, I ignored my gut feeling. I was focused on the prize. We each grabbed the section of the couch. As I lifted my end, I noticed something odd. It was incredibly light,
almost hollow feeling. It was definitely not as heavy as they claimed. We carried it toward the truck. That's when Dave spoke again. "Hey, you know what, man? We got the cushions inside. We took them in so they wouldn't get dusty. Would you mind giving us a hand for a second to bring them out?" I hesitated. Sure. Where are they?" "Just inside the door," he said. He nodded toward the still open front door. "We'll be 2 seconds." He set his end of the couch down. Rick did the same. They were both standing between me and the truck. They subtly blocked my path. My inner alarm bells were screaming now. Why would they bring the couch out but leave the cushions inside? It made no sense. "You know, it's all right," I said, forcing a nervous laugh. "I can just grab them. No big deal."
Dave's face hardened. The thin veil of neighborly friendliness he had been wearing completely vanished. "No," he said. His voice was flat and cold. "We need your help." He took a step toward me. At the same time, Rick moved to my side. I was caught between them. I glanced toward the open front door. I saw nothing but blackness. A faint, foul smell, like spoiled meat and chemicals, drifted out from the house. My blood ran cold. This isn't about the couch. The couch is bait. That thought hit me with the force of a physical blow. In that instant, my brain switched from awkward situation to life or death. Before I could even react, Dave lunged. He grabbed my right arm in a vice-like grip. Simultaneously, Rick got behind me. He shoved me hard in the back. It propelled me toward the dark doorway. I stumbled forward. The gravel crunched under my feet. They were trying to force me inside the house. Panic gave me a surge of adrenaline I did not know I had. I was not a fighter, but pure animal instinct took over. I twisted my body. I threw my left elbow back as hard as I could. I felt it connect with something soft. Rick grunted in pain. His grip loosened for a fraction of a second. It was all the time I needed. I ripped my arm free from Dave's grasp. I ducked under his reaching arm. I scrambled away. I did not run for the truck. They were too close. Instead, I ran across the dark, junk-filled yard. I tripped over unseen objects. "Get him!" Dave roared from behind me. I did not look back. I just ran. I could hear them crashing through the darkness behind me. Their heavy footsteps pounded the dirt. I hit the edge of the property. I crashed through a thicket of overgrown bushes. Thorns tore at my skin and clothes. I stumbled out onto the empty, unlit road. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it would burst. I sprinted down the middle of the asphalt. I gasped for air. I prayed for a car to appear. Headlights. Far down the road, a pair of headlights was approaching. I ran toward them. I waved my arms like a maniac. I must have looked insane. A guy running out of the darkness in the middle of nowhere. The car, an old sedan, slowed down cautiously. I ran right up to the driver's side window. I banged on it. "Please, you gotta help me. These guys are trying to kill me," I yelled. My voice cracked with terror. The driver, an elderly man with a terrified look on his face, thankfully unlocked the doors. I yanked the back door open. I threw myself inside. I screamed, "Go, go, go!" He stomped on the gas. The car sped away. It left the house at Eucalyptus Avenue behind in the darkness. I had him drop me at the first gas station we came to. I immediately called 911. The police met me there. I told them the whole story. I shook uncontrollably the entire time.
They took it seriously. They dispatched 2 cars to the address. I had to go back with them. Pulling up to that house again, even with 2 police cruisers present, was one of the most terrifying things I have ever done. The house was empty. The couch was still sitting in the driveway right where we had left it. The front door was closed. The lights were off. The 2 men, Dave and Rick, were gone. The police found no one inside. The email address and phone number from the ad were burners, completely untraceable. There was nothing they could do. I had to call Mark. I told him his truck was still sitting in the driveway of a house where 2 men had just tried to abduct me. He was understandably freaked out, but he went with a police escort to retrieve it the next morning. For weeks after, I lived in a state of constant fear. I barely slept. Every creak in my apartment and every shadow in a dark corner sent a jolt of panic through me. The most terrifying part was that they had my information. They had my name, my email, and my phone number. They knew what I looked like. About a month after the incident, the real horror began. I was driving home from work. I saw a car behind me, a beat-up, dark green Honda Accord. It was just like the one I had seen parked in the weeds next to their house. It followed me for 3 exits. I tried to tell myself it was a coincidence. There were thousands of cars like that in Southern California. But when I took a random turn into a residential neighborhood, the car too. My heart seized. I sped through the neighborhood. I made a series of frantic random turns until I finally lost it. I reported it to the police, but without a license plate, there was nothing they could do. It could be a coincidence, the officer told me. That was not reassuring. A week later, it happened again. This time, I was at the grocery store. As I walked back to my car, I saw him. It was Rick, the man in the hoodie. He was standing across the parking lot by a dumpster. He was just watching me. There was no mistaking his stocky build and the dead, empty look in his eyes. We made eye contact for a full 3 seconds. Then he turned and walked away. He disappeared behind the building. I completely lost it. I jumped in my car. I locked the doors. I drove straight to the police station. I told them I was being actively stalked. They were more sympathetic this time. An officer took my statement. He promised to have patrols drive by my apartment complex more frequently. I became a prisoner in my own home. I bought new locks for my door. I got a security camera for my front window.
In 2019, I left San Diego and moved to New York. I was 22. I had a small suitcase, a cheap laptop, and a pocket full of hope. I had a job interview that week. I found a small apartment in Queens online. The work was for a startup just off Atlantic Avenue. I was tired but proud to be starting on my own. I thought I had done everything right. The apartment was on the 3rd floor of an old building. It had thin walls and a rickety elevator that sometimes stopped between floors. The landlord was a quiet man. He handed me the keys. He told me the building had been around for a long time. The apartment itself was small. 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a living room that barely fit a couch. The windows looked over a narrow back alley and the roof of a deli. At night, the streetlight made pale squares on the floor. I liked that the space was mine. Back in San Diego, I used a 32-inch TV.
It was fine for late-night shows and small movie nights. Here, the living room felt empty with that small screen. I wanted a bigger TV. For months, I saved money. I cut down on dinners out. I took extra shifts at the cafe near my office. I told myself a new TV would make the city feel more like home. Craigslist has its own world. I watched the listings for weeks. I learned how to read people through text, who wrote in full sentences, who used one-line descriptions, who posted clear photos. One Saturday, I found it. Samsung 55-inch, like new, $250, moving sale. The picture showed a big flat screen on a bare stand. It looked almost new, no scratches. It was the kind of TV I had been dreaming of. The seller's name was John. His profile said he worked in real estate and was moving. He wrote polite sentences. He answered my questions quickly. He said we could pick up the TV in the evening. I borrowed my neighbor's dolly. I took the subway across town. The seller lived 2 blocks from a small park. He opened the door himself. He was in his 30s, wearing a plain shirt and jeans. He smiled. He talked in a calm voice. The TV was heavier than it looked. He let me test it. The screen turned on. It showed a bright picture. He included a soundbar and a wall mount. He even offered to help me lift it into my dolly. His kindness made me relax. I left with the TV and a small sense of victory. Setting up the TV was slow work. The apartment felt different with the big screen. I watched a movie that night. I felt warm, like I had a small reward for all the hard work. For the first few nights, I fell asleep to the glow of late-night shows. It was easy to forget I was alone in a new city. But small things started to happen. Little noises in the building. Things I could explain. Once, late at night, I heard soft knocking on my front door. I checked the peephole. No one stood there. Another time, my neighbor across the hall was playing loud music. Then it stopped suddenly. The next morning, I found a note under my door. It said, "Nice TV." No name, no signature. I thought it was a joke. Maybe someone saw me carrying the TV. They left a message. I told myself not to think too much about it. After a while, the knocking became more frequent. Sometimes it came in the middle of the night. 3 quick knocks, then silence. Other times, it was a single slow knock that made my heart jump. I would stay still for a while, listening. The apartment had thin walls. I could hear a distant faucet running. The knocking never happened during the day. It always felt like something that belonged to the night. I started to feel watched. It was a small, steady feeling, like the hairs on my arms were awake. I would turn off the TV. I sat in the dark, waiting for that sense to fade. It did not go away. I began to change little things. I moved the couch to block the view of the door. I kept my phone on the coffee table. I kept a lamp on. I told myself to be practical. Lock the door, change the locks if needed, check the camera on the building's front entrance. But the feeling grew, like a shadow I could not shake. One night, after a long day at work, I came home. I found the living room slightly different. The TV stand was pushed a little to the left. I could tell because my small stack of magazines had slid a bit. I walked over to the TV. The back panel had a seam I had not noticed before, a small, almost hidden plastic cover in the rear corner. I had never opened the back of an expensive TV before. My hands trembled a little as I felt the seam. The apartment was quiet. The light from the street made a soft rectangle on the carpet. I found a screwdriver. I knelt and pried open the tiny panel.
Inside, behind wires and a metal frame, I found something that made me swallow hard. A small camera lens, no bigger than a button. It was tucked in a hollow. It was angled perfectly to see the couch, the doorway, and the small area where I slept on some nights. I touched it. It felt warm, like it had been used recently. My phone fell out of my hand. I thought of the seller, of his calm voice, of the friendly lift onto my dolly. I thought of the note in my doorway that said, "Nice TV." I felt my hands go cold. I called the police. They arrived fast. 2 officers with blank, professional faces. They took pictures. They wrote notes. They sealed the TV area with tape. I told them everything, from the Craigslist messages to the note under my door. They asked for the seller's information. I gave them his name and address. He had given me his number and the place where he said he worked. The officers drove to the seller's address the next day. They asked me to come down to the station to make a statement. My apartment felt too small after that. I could not stop thinking about the camera and what it had seen. I slept badly. When I closed my eyes, I imagined someone watching the TV feed, watching my small life in this new city. At the police station, I sat in a folding chair. I told the detective about John. He said he would call the seller and bring him in. Later, in a small interrogation room, the seller sat across from me. He looked tired. He kept rubbing his hands. He said he was sorry. He told the detective he had bought the TV at a yard sale in Staten Island. He said he did not know there was a camera. He said he never would watch someone without permission. I watched him. His eyes flicked to the camera in the room. He avoided looking at mine. The detective read his statement into the record. There was nothing in it that proved guilt. He had paperwork showing the cash for the sale. He had a receipt from an estate sale the week before. He claimed he had no idea. The police took the TV for evidence. They examined the camera. I waited for the worst. I waited for the detective to say the camera had stored hours of footage of my life. Instead, he told me something that made the room feel colder in a different way. The camera was a live feed device. It streamed video to a remote site, but it had no storage. It could show someone what was happening right now, but it did not record or save the images. The detective said this meant there might be no saved proof of who had watched me. That made it hard to find the watcher. They traced the seller's bank and phone records. They tracked the IP address used to set up the camera feed. It led them to a public Wi-Fi hotspot near the park, a place people used all the time. The trail went cold there. The detective told me they would do what they could, but without recorded footage, the case was difficult. The seller denied any knowing involvement. The police told me to change your locks and to be careful. After the TV was left with the officers, I sat on the floor where it had stood. The apartment felt exposed. The television had been a window and a wall at the same time. I felt foolish for trusting a stranger. I felt angry at myself for not checking more carefully. I also felt frightened in a way that was hard to explain. It was not only for my privacy. It was for the fact that someone had watched me. They could now be watching others in the city,
with a live feed that left no trace. Days passed. The knocking stopped for a while. I changed the locks. I put a cheap door chain on the inside. I slept with the lamp on. I told myself to move on. I told myself I was safe. But the feeling of being watched was slow to leave. Weeks later, a package arrived at my door. It was small and unmarked. Inside was a note, "Sorry, wrong TV." I did not reply. I called the detective who had worked my case. He said he would come by and take the package. He said he would add it to the file. I kept the package untouched. Sometimes, when I walk past electronics stores now, I see TVs in the windows. I think of that small lens hiding in the seam. I think of the yard sale the seller mentioned, the public Wi-Fi, and the thin line between a private life and whatever someone can stream with a hidden device. The city that once felt bright and full of chance now had a new underlayer to it. Small, careful shadows where people could look in without leaving a mark.
A few years ago, I was wrapping up my junior year at the University of Washington in Seattle. I had just signed a lease for a tiny one-bedroom apartment off campus. It was the kind with peeling paint and a fridge that hummed like it was possessed. Rent was due in a month. My bank account was drier than the Sahara. My parents lived in a quiet suburb about 20 minutes east in Bellevue. I had been crashing in my old bedroom there while job hunting. To scrape together some cash, I decided to sell off the junk I had accumulated over the years. It was mostly beat-up furniture from high school that no one would miss. I snapped a few blurry photos of my wooden dresser on my phone. It was nothing fancy. Tall, oak finish, chipped in places, with 3 drawers that stuck if you yanked too hard. I had bought it secondhand from a garage sale when I was 16. "Solid dresser, $50, I typed into the Craigslist ad. I added the address of my parents' house. I figured I would be home alone that weekend. My mom and dad were heading to Portland for a family reunion, my grandma's 80th birthday. I hit post and forgot about it. I scrolled TikTok instead. The first response came that afternoon. It was from a guy named Mark. "Hey, interested in the dresser? Still available? Can pick up tomorrow if yes?" Simple enough. I texted back, "Yup, all yours for $50. Tomorrow works, say 2 p.m. He replied quickly, "Perfect. Will you be alone when I pick it up?" I stared at the screen for a second. It felt off, like one of those random questions from a blind date app. Maybe he was just shy about dealing with groups? "Yeah, just me," I wrote, adding a thumbs up emoji to keep it light. "Cool. Which bedroom is it in?" "The one facing the street." Okay, that one made my stomach twist a little. How did he know the house had a street-facing bedroom? I had mentioned the address, sure, but not the layout. I glanced out the window. Our 2-story colonial backed onto a wooded lot, but the front bedroom, mine, overlooked the quiet cul-de-sac. Yeah, that's the one," I replied. I told myself he must have driven by or something. Craigslist weirdos were a dime a dozen. I had read stories on Reddit about flaky buyers, not murderers. We settled on cash, no haggling. I did not think much more about it. The next day, I vacuumed the room, I wiped down the dresser, I even sprayed some Febreze to mask the faint musty smell from the basement storage. Around 1:45, I heard a car pull up, a silver Honda Civic. Nothing suspicious. The guy who stepped out looked like every dad at a PTA meeting. Mid-40s, khakis, a faded mariner's hoodie, short brown hair going gray at the temples. He carried a dolly and some bungee cords, like he had done this 100 times. "Mark," I called from the porch, forcing a smile. Seattle's weather was drizzling as usual, so I waved him in quickly. "That's me.
he said. His voice was warm and gravelly, like a radio host. He shook my hand. Firm grip, no eye contact that lingered too long. Nice place. 2-story, right? Looks solid from the street. Yeah, thanks. I led him through the foyer, past the living room with its worn leather couch and the kitchen island cluttered with my parents' coffee mugs. Up the stairs, second door on the left. He followed closely, not chatting much at first, just glancing around. Dresser's right here, I said, pointing. It sat against the wall under the window, curtains half drawn. He nodded. He ran a hand over the top. Good bones. Scratches, but that's fixable. Then he knelt, checking the drawers. They stuck like I remembered. He chuckled. These will need WD-40. Have you lived here long? All my life, I said, leaning against the doorframe. Small talk felt normal. Moving out soon, though. College apartment. Ah, University of Washington. Smart kid. He stood. He pulled a worn wallet from his back pocket. He counted out $50 in 20s. Crisp bills, like from an ATM. Here you go. But, it's heavier than it looks. Mind giving me a hand with the car? No big deal. I grabbed one end, he took the other. We maneuvered it down the stairs sideways, bumping the banister once. In the foyer, he paused, eyeing the front door. Yale locks, huh? Those deadbolts are tough. What about the back? Same setup. I shifted my grip, arms aching. Yeah, pretty much. Why? Just curious. An old house like this, you never know with security. He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. We got the dresser to his trunk. He popped it open. I noticed a toolbox and some tarps inside, the kind you see at Home Depot. As we strapped it down, he glanced back at the house. Do your folks hang around much? Bedroom like yours, prime spot for kids, but quiet neighborhood. They're out of town this weekend, I said, wiping sweat from my forehead. Usually home evenings, though. Work in the city. Got it. Safe travels when you move. He climbed in, waved, and drove off slowly, like he was memorizing the curve of the street. I stood there a minute. Rain soaked my shirt. I felt a prickle on my neck. But hey, cash in hand. I texted my roommate about splitting a pizza that night. The weekend passed fine. Parents came back Sunday. They raved about the reunion cake. I crashed early. Monday, classes dragged. Intro to psych, then a lab where we dissected frog hearts.
By Wednesday, I was back at their place, packing boxes in my room. The unease from Mark's questions had faded to a vague itch, like forgetting a dream. I even laughed about it with my mom over dinner. Some Craigslist dude grilled me like a realtor. She rolled her eyes. People are nosy. Lock up tight, that's all. That night, around 1 a.m., I woke up to a click. Not loud, but distinct, like metal on metal, right outside my door. I froze in bed, heart thumping. The house was old. Settling noises happened all the time. Creaky floors, wind rattling the gutters. But this was different, a soft twist, like someone testing the knob. I held my breath, straining to hear. Nothing. After a minute, I slipped out of bed, barefoot on the carpet. I pressed my ear to the wood. Silence. Down the hall, my parents' door was shut, a sliver of light under it. Dad's CPAP machine hummed faintly. I checked the knob, locked like always. Back to bed, but sleep did not come easily. I scrolled Instagram till my eyes burned, blaming it on stress. Thursday was normal. Rainy commute on the 5:50 bus, coffee from the campus cart that tasted like burnt rubber. But that night, it happened again. 2:17 a.m., my phone said when I jolted awake. Footsteps, not inside. Heavy, deliberate thuds on the wooden porch below my window. The side porch wrapped around the house, accessible from the backyard gate. I sat up, sheets tangled. I peered through the blinds.
Moonlight filtered through clouds, casting shadows on the dew-wet boards. No one, just the neighbor's sprinkler ticking in the distance. "Porch cat," I muttered, flopping back. We had strays sometimes, knocking over pots. But cats do not thud like boots. Friday, I mentioned it to my dad over breakfast. "Heard stuff last night, like someone's out there." He sipped his black coffee, newspaper folded. "Bears, maybe. They're coming down from the Cascades more. Bellevue butts up against Greenbelts. Black bears wander in, raiding trash cans." Made sense. "I'll check the motion lights." He did. Bulbs were good, sensors clean, no tracks in the mud. I nodded, relieved, and headed to class. But doubt gnawed. The steps had been too rhythmic, too human. Saturday, my parents went to Costco, leaving me to pack. I blasted a playlist, Billie Eilish, then some old Nirvana to fit the Seattle vibe while taping boxes. Around noon, the noises started early. Not steps this time. A scrape, like a key in the back door lock downstairs. I paused the music, pulse racing. "Hello?" I called, voice cracking. No answer. I grabbed my phone. I crept to the top of the stairs. The kitchen door was shut, deadbolt gleaming. I twisted it, locked tight. "Wind," I hissed. Gusts could jiggle the frame. But as I turned back, my eyes caught the window by the stairs, the one facing the side yard. Blinds half open, like I had left them? Had I? I yanked them shut, hands shaky. That night, it escalated. 11:45 p.m. I was doom-scrolling Reddit in bed when the handle tested again, my bedroom door. Slow, deliberate turns back and forth. My mouth went dry. This was not settling. I bolted upright, fumbling for the lamp. Light flooded the room. Posters of Radiohead curling at the edges, my desk piled with textbooks. The hall was quiet when I cracked the door. "Dad," I said, down the stairs, snoring from their room. I padded to the bathroom. I splashed water on my face. The mirror showed bags under my eyes, my skin pale. "You're losing it, Alex. Final stress." But Sunday morning, over pancakes, I spilled it all. The clicks, the steps, the scrape. Mom's fork hovered midair. "We should have gotten that Ring camera sooner. Let's call the Cullocks, non-emergency." Dad nodded. "Serious, or it's kids from down the block. Pranks." The officer who came was a bored guy named Rodriguez, badge shining under the foyer light. He walked the perimeter. He shone his flashlight into the bushes. "No footprints. Locks look solid. Yale. Good choice. Could be animals. Set up a trail cam if you're worried." We did. Dad mounted a cheap Wise on the porch post that afternoon, linked to his phone. I felt stupid, like I had overreacted. Classes Monday blurred by. Professor droning about Freud, my notes a scribble. Noises that night? Nothing. Peaceful silence. Rain pattering the roof. I slept like a rock. Tuesday, though, 3 a.m. Phone buzzed. Wise alert. I grabbed it, heart slamming. Grainy black and white feed. Motion by the side porch. A shadow moved. Tall and upright, not a bear. It lingered near my window, head tilting up like it was listening, then gone, slipping toward the backyard gate. I woke my parents, voice trembling. Someone's out there. Dad called 911 this time. Cops came fast, 2 units, lights painting the street blue and red. They searched the yard. They found a bent nail by the gate latch. Pried it, but didn't get in. Probably scoping for a break-in. The younger officer, a woman with a ponytail, eyed me. "Have you sold anything online lately? Furniture?" My blood went cold. "Yeah, a dresser, last week." She nodded. Happens more than you think. Stalkers use ads to case houses, get layouts, routines. I showed her the texts from Mark. She snapped photos. We'll run the number. Change your locks tomorrow and move out quickly. They left, but sleep was gone. I sat by the window, curtains drawn, listening to every creak. The realization hit like ice water. The dresser was not the point. Those questions, alone, which bedroom, locks, parents' schedule, they were reconnaissance. He had mapped us, paid $50 for a blueprint of our lives. On Wednesday, the locksmith came at dawn. New deadbolts, shiny and heavy. I skipped psych, packed frantic, clothes in trash bags, books in the hatchback. Mom hugged me tight at the door. Call every night. Love you. My new apartment smelled like fresh paint and takeout from the Thai place downstairs. First night, I triple-checked the chain. I wedged a chair under the knob. No porch, no side yard, just a fire escape view of alley dumpsters. But at 2 a.m., I woke sweating. A text notification? No, just my phone slipping off the pillow. The noises followed in dreams, clicks echoing, steps thudding closer. Weeks blurred. Cops traced Mark's number to a burner, dead end, no hits on the plate. I changed my number. I deleted Craigslist. Roommate joked about it. You're a serial killer fan club. I laughed it off. But showers took longer. Shadows made me jump.